Hello and welcome everybody to Inside IIM. My name is Oshin, and in conversation with me today, I have three CAT toppers. Incidentally, their percentiles in their respective section form a beautiful chronology. We have Ashish, who scored a 99.98 in VRC. We have Kaustubh, who scored a 99.99 in DILR. And we have Vineeth, who scored 100 in Quant. These gentlemen are going to talk to me today about what topics you must cover if you want to score well, score high in CAT. There are some topics that are must do for everybody. Even if you're, regardless of if you're good at them, bad at them, doing the basics of them will only help you boost your score. So not just about those topics, we'll talk about some challenges that you would have while you're finishing your course, how you can overcome them, and about all other questions you would want us to answer through the live chat. So without further ado, let me ask all of you to meet our guests. Ashish, if you could please say hello, introduce yourself to our audience.
Hi everyone, I'm Ashish Sen. I graduated from IIT in 2020, and post which I worked for 1 year in Deloitte Consulting. I scored 99.99 overall with 99.98 in VRC in CAT 2020, and now I'm a student of IIM Bangalore.
Okay, thanks so much. Kaustubh, what about you?
Yeah, hi everyone, this is Kaustubh. I'm from Kanpur, and I did my undergraduation from IIT just like Ashish, and I appeared for CAT 2020 and I scored 99.99 with 99.99 in DILR, and I joined FMS Delhi this year.
That sounds great. Vineeth, what about you?
So, okay, there will be a slight difference here. Hi, everyone. This is Vineeth. I'm right now in the second year of my MBA at FMS Delhi. Like them, even I have given CAT 2020 just for fun. I have scored 99.95 overall with 100 in QA.
I love how Vineeth makes sure he says just for fun. That's important to share. Okay. So first question to you all before we dive into the topics for CAT that are must do. What is it that you think CAT aspirants must do at this point onwards to make sure that they score well? And not just on the particular section, I'd ask you to talk about in general, at large, broad must do things to make sure you score well on CAT starting September. And anybody who wants to go, please feel free.
I mean, I feel if it's September, it's the right time to start mocks. Like once I was during my first attempt, the attempt that I got into FMS Delhi, each Saturday and Sunday I used to give 3 mocks, one from each of the popular CAT coaching centers, and throughout the week for the 5 days I used to analyze those mocks. One result used to come on Monday, the result on Tuesday, the other result on Wednesday, and during the weekdays, every morning I used to give one sectional test, and every night I used to give another sectional test. Now, till this point, I guess most of you would have had most of the concepts clear in both DILR and QA, and you might have had a lot of reading practice in VRC as well. But now is the time to actually know how are you going to perform in that particular section in that 1 hour time slot or in that 40-minute time slot. Now, are you able to solve those questions with the same efficiency if there are 10 minutes clicking down the clock? If Kaustubh and Ashish wants to add anything again.
Yeah, sure. So what I'll say that my strategy was also similar, but the way I approached was slightly different because by the time it was September, I had a lot of things to focus on in college. There were placements going on, and there were end semesters as well that were approaching at the same time as CAT. So I couldn't allot a particular time slot of the day to attempt a test or a sectional test. So what I used to do that whenever I found some free time, a window of 40 minutes or 1 hour, I used to attempt a sectional test. And for weekends, I used to keep this full mock test. And I also took a mock test, and after the results, I used to analyze it for 2-3 hours. And you need to do it as frequently as possible starting from September.
Right.
I'll just add on to what Kaustubh and Vineeth said. My strategy was exactly same as what Vineeth used to follow. And I'll just focus on one point, that do not leave your analysis till the end. Okay, don't ignore your analysis. Analyzing a mock is as important as giving a mock. And if you don't analyze a mock, you're not taking away any learnings from it. So focus on your analysis and like not just the number of mocks that you are giving. That's all.
Okay, thanks for your answers, guys. At this point, we have our audience already asking certain questions, so I'll take 2 of them up, and then we'll move on to the next bit of our conversation. We have we also have a lot of your fans who are excited about you being here, so just letting you know that there are people who are enjoying this. We have Samarth asking what things should we do for improving our VRC score in particular. If Ashish would like to take this up first.
Sure. See, VRC is a bit different from the other two sections, and it requires a long-term practice. So you should like start your reading practice and your RC practice, and it should already be in process right now. So it's not something that you'll learn something today and by tomorrow you'll get 99 percentile or something like that. So it's a gradual process in which you'll go through the grind again and again and again, and then through the end of the process, by the doomsday, by the cat day, you'll be in a position to tackle that section. So basically, if you haven't started, I'll suggest that you practice a lot of RCs, you read something, and you focus on reading and understanding while reading. It's not just the reading speed. You need to get the interpretation of what the author is trying to say. So read a lot and practice RCs. So two sentences, that's all.
Okay, fairly simple, not so simple to execute, I imagine.
Right.
Thanks for that. We'll go to the next question, which is Himanshu asking, how do I cope up with quants overall? Okay, Vineeth, your question.
Okay. Quants overall, I mean, for everyone, I guess there is a strong area and a weak area, right? But I guess one thing that everyone can agree upon, even engineers and non-engineers, that they don't like to solve geometry questions. And when you're giving the mock test, particularly for math, it's a test of speed. Like even if you're good in all the areas, if you're taking 3 minutes or 4 minutes to solve a particular question, you'll be having a lot of pressure halfway into the section. And if you have that within 20 minutes, with 20 minutes remaining in the section, then you'll not be able to perform efficiently even in those 20 minutes. So it is important to slot your attempt perfectly. So for that, what I used to do was, initially, if there are any, like I used to go linearly, right, from 1 to 26 or 1 to 34. If I saw an easy and direct question, I used to solve it. If it was a question that I thought of was of medium difficulty, I used to divide it into two categories. One, the one which I can solve under 2 minutes, and the one which I can probably solve, but it'll take more than 2 minutes. And the third category is all the difficult questions and the geometry questions. Now in the first round, I used to only solve the easy questions and note down the medium questions. In the second round, I used to solve the medium questions, which I could probably solve under 2 minutes. And if I'm solving the question and within 1 minute, if I'm going nowhere, and if I'm feeling that even if I continue ahead with it, I might probably take 3 minutes, I used to give it up. And I used to go to the next question. And once the second round is done, then I used to solve the questions, which I would probably take more than 2 minutes in the medium difficulty level. Then I would go to solve the geometry and the difficult questions.
All right, got it. Thanks so much, Vineeth. We have more questions. For example, what do you think are the best books to prepare? If I take 2 sectionals daily and mocks on weekends, is that sufficient? Let me just quickly ask your yes/no kind of views on these. So if I take 2 sectionals daily and mocks on weekends with analysis, is this sufficient?
I mean, it depends, but yeah, it should be sufficient.
That worked for me. That worked for me.
Awesome, right? Then we have Omkar asking, his VRC score has sort of stuck between 30 and 35. So is this, how does he sort of cross that plateau from here? It's not a yes or no question, but.
Yeah, okay. Even I had a stage of plateauing in my scores. There's nothing different actually that you can do. What you can probably do is see if there's a certain pattern to your mistakes. So what people actually, many of us, what we end up doing is like we ignore ParaJumbles and all the other non-RC questions. So you can see if that is the area where you're losing marks or not. If that is the area, then you can probably try to practice a little bit more on that. Yeah, apart from identifying your mistakes and trying to work more on that, there's nothing else that you can do. Just stick to it, and then someday you'll cross the plateau. So keep on with it and don't lose hope. That's what I did.
All right, thanks, Ashish. We'll go to the next question, which is Himanshu asking main topics and important topics for quants. Himanshu, we'll get into it in another 5 minutes. Thanks for your patience already. Next, lots of people asking, what books do I read? What books do I prepare from? Any thoughts, guys?
So, yeah, Vineeth, go ahead.
So, for QA and DILR, I don't have any book suggestions, but for VRC, I do have one. because this book has particularly helped me to increase my percentile in VRC. In my first attempt, I had a 85 in VRC, and during the mocks also, it was the section that I consistently struggled in. In fact, in 80% of the mocks, I struggled to even cross the sectional cutoff in VRC. So the book that really helped me was GMAT's Critical Reasoning Bible, because the RC questions that are there in CAT particularly, they are not fact-based questions, right? You have to have a critical reasoning ability in order to score well with them. And that book, it very nicely explained how the options are made, how the questions are framed, how the options can be twisted so that you might think this is the right answer, how the right answer is probably a mask between the wrong answers in the options. That book helped me a lot.
Got it. We had somebody else who scored 100 percentile in VA share with us that they solved a lot of GMAT CR questions actively. So this is something that I've heard multiple times in these conversations. I'm curious what you think about it, Ashish.
Yeah, actually, even I solved a lot of GMAT critical reasoning questions. Actually, before that, I used to follow Aeon regularly, and I used to read one article from that regularly. So it's not just reading that actually helped me improve my reading speed as well as improve my interpretation and maintain that flow of thought. So those articles are generally very long, and it takes around 25 minutes to read through those articles. So it helped me maintain my concentration for the whole duration and develop that chain of thought. So generally it used to happen to me that while reading an article in the CAT paper, sometimes there's a distraction and you have to read from one paragraph from the previous paragraph again. So that actually wastes a lot of your time. So this reading Aeon consistently every day for around like 5 to 6 months helped me maintain that flow of thought, that concentration, and improve my reading speed. Then I also simultaneously solved a lot of GMAT critical reasoning questions, as Vineeth and you also said. And yeah, apart from that, mocks from all the main CAT prep coaching centers. That worked.
Awesome. And Vineeth, could you please share the name of whatever book you referred? There are people who are curious about it.
GMAT Critical Reasoning Bible by Tata McGraw-Hill.
So that's that. Ashish, did you use any book or was it GMAT Club, online questions?
I didn't use any particular book, but I had lots of resources from GMAT critical reasoning questions. Like I think it was like RC 99 and something. I don't exactly remember the name of those books, but yeah, those were GMAT questions.
Got it. Kaustubh, coming back to you, I am curious, what does it take for somebody to score a 99.99 in DILR? Are you someone who's always had a logical mind, very good with puzzles ever since you were a child? Was it any of that, or did you build all these skills while you were preparing for CAT?
Yeah, so first, yeah, I mean, I was somewhat good at puzzles and logical reasoning, but I wasn't particularly good at solving the sets that came in CAT. So when I started my preparation around 5-6 months before CAT, I used to gauge my performance in 1 hour sectional tests. So when I attempted those tests, I saw that I was able to solve only 2-3 sets in 1 hour. So from there, with practice and identifying mistakes over time and attempting as many sectional and full tests as I could, that helped me to reach that level where I could solve to, let's say, 5-6 sets in 1 hour or sometimes 7.
Got it. We have lots of your friends writing a lot of things in the comments. One of them is Aditya, who just can't stop talking to you. Please have a chat with them after this live. I think they have questions for you.
Yeah, sure.
I'll now move on to the most important bit of our conversation, which is topics that you think CAT aspirants must do from this time onwards if they want to score a high score, whatever their target is for the exam. And let me start with you, Vineeth, for quants, because it's a very syllabus oriented section. If I'll just give you quick context, there'd be some topics that a lot of people would find difficult. There'd be some topics that they'd find easy. As a 100 percentile, you could say कि नहीं सभी करना है. But the question really is, what are topics that you think people can afford to leave? Are there any topics like that, or are there topics that you think are most important and we can't afford to leave? Please answer whichever question you think is appropriate.
For me, like if I have to suggest one topic that, while I'd say कि any topic cannot be affordable to leave, because what if the questions in that topic are the most simplest? And what if they have just kept an effort for a couple of days, and if they had practiced that questions over the mock test, then probably they would have scored at least 6 to 9 more marks. So I don't think any topic is affordable to leave, because there are 3 months more. Like if someone is asking this question to me in October or November, then I'd say probably geometry, because questions in arithmetic, questions in probability, questions in permutations and combinations, even if one is not clear with the concept, if they attempt it, if they think logically enough, they might be able to solve the question maybe within 3 to 4 minutes, not within 2 minutes. But with geometry, one does not know the concept, they'll not be able to do it. And learning the concept in geometry will take time. And topics that aspirants should focus on, I feel, are arithmetic, because the concepts in arithmetic are simple, so everyone can easily understand the topics. But the questions, either they'll make the language of the question difficult, or they'll probably play with the numbers in the question. That's it. That is the best that they can do. And if one is able to have a clear clarity about what the question is asking, then they'll be able to solve these questions easily.
All right, got it. So any specific topic that you think should be left right now? The answer is no. You think that this is the time to cover up every topic that one possibly can. If it was, however, later on, you would say geometry. Apart from that, when it comes to modern math, do you think, again, it's something that must be done to score well on quants?
So one thing that I'll suggest, even for modern maths, also geometry as well, that if one is not comfortable to read the topic separately, to learn the concept separately, one that they can do is probably give the mock tests, maybe skip those questions. But at least while doing the mock analysis, if there are video solutions to that question, go through the video solutions, because generally in video solutions, they explain the concept involved as well. So what I used to do was, I used to note that question down in a separate diary, and I used to revisit those questions after a couple of weeks. And then if those questions are repeated in the new mocks, I used to solve them. Then after a month, I used to again go back to those questions and how they explain the concept. And by the end of 2 months, I had a knack of solving those questions. That is something that they can do by this point.
Definitely. Thanks so much, Vineeth. We have a couple of questions for you. I'll just put them across before we move to the next section, next topics. We have someone who's asking, how do I revise the quant section before taking a mock? Because given there are so many topics and it's been a while since I finished practicing all of them.
While the topics involved are huge, but what I used to do was, I used to maintain a small diary. Like the size of the diary was, okay, it is beside me right now. This is the diary. And each concept that is involved, I used to write them down. It started with number systems, arithmetic, and it went on till geometry. And within a couple of lines, I used to also explain where the formula can be used. Probably this is something that you can do, and it can be there beside you while analyzing the mock as well. And it has helped me a lot. I probably wrote 40 pages in it, and each page is having the width of this. So probably this should be enough. Maybe this is something that they can do. And again, noting down the questions of each mock test. Like each mock test, each question in each mock test, it might teach you a new concept. And probably if you are not comfortable in learning a new concept, and even it might take time, if you're trying to learn a concept from YouTube, or if you're trying to learn a concept from a new textbook, it might take time. So this is something that you can do.
I love how Vineeth focuses on the size of the diary as much as he does on the topics. Okay, moving on. Next question, we have Tanmita, who's asked, this is the second time, I'll just take it up. DILR was really tough for her when she took the 2020 exam. Problem is how much time to spend on each question, how to make sure we give enough time for each set.
Yeah, so DILR was tough for me as well. I was in slot 3, and slot 3 DILR was probably the toughest. That was the common consensus after the exam. And so what happened was that in the first 6 minutes, I couldn't attempt a single question. I couldn't solve a single set. But what helped me was that I started 3 sets simultaneously in those 6 minutes. And I was trying to solve each of them on a different page. And I was trying to note down my readings as neatly as possible, so that if I come back to those sets, I don't have to recall from where I left, and I can continue my calculations from where I left. So that helped me during the exam. And coming to how you can attempt more questions per minute, that comes from practice. I think in DILR, it's all about sheer practice. You have to identify your weaknesses. So sometimes people are weak in DI or LR or both. So you need to identify that early on. and you need to focus on those things. So I realized that I am weak in DI. So for that, a lot of people suggested me to solve IIFT sets, because IIFT are very calculation intensive sets. So I solved 4 or 5 of those, and that actually helped me break that barrier or cross that plateau. So those things you can try.
All right. Okay. Thanks, Kaustubh. Ashish, you were saying
One
something?
thing I would like to add here. So, like for me, DILR was one section in which I would never attempt it sequentially. So I always used to give at least 3-4 minutes initially to just gauge through the sets and identify the easiest set out there. So the section would be a mix of tough sets and easy sets. So like if you get stuck on the wrong set, that can destroy your DLR section, and that happened to me in a couple of mocks. So after that, like the sets are like of a certain type. So you when you give a lot of mocks, you get a knack or a feel of like what sets you're most comfortable with. So I used to target first 2 or 3 sets in the first half an hour. Like when it was a 1 hour mock, I used to target 3 sets in the first half an hour, and then I used to like incrementally target 1 or 2 more sets. So I know that 4 sets is a safe target. I'll get a decent percentile. So from there, I can now take a risk of targeting a difficult set, which I'm not very comfortable with. So probably this is something which you can try out. But yeah, this requires a lot of practice. You need to solve a lot of sets to identify which one will be your preferred set or preferred question, which you can attempt easily.
All right.
One more thing that I wanted to add here. Like if we look at CAT DILR papers right from 2017, CAT has followed a new pattern, wherein in each set, the first 2 questions are generally the easiest. And for the next 2 questions, they'll add new data and they'll make the questions a lot more difficult. So if you're someone like if you gaze through the sets, if you thought only a couple were easy and maybe 5 or 6 were tough, what you can do is for the first 20-30 minutes, you can probably solve those 2 sets. And after that, try to just look at the data and solve those easy 2 questions in the rest of the sets. So maybe first 2 sets, you'll be attempting the 8 questions. And for the rest 5 sets, 2 in each of them and 10, the attempts will be good enough.
And you mentioned, Vineeth, you mentioned those easy sets or those more difficult sets. So question is, how do you judge what's a easy set and what's a difficult set? We had someone talk about how they don't look at the volume of the length of the question. Volume to bahut hi galat ho gaya. The length of the question, they don't look at it when they're selecting specifically DILR sets. So Kaustubh and Vineeth, I mean, in fact, 3 of you, what parameters do you look at when you're selecting sets for the first round, let's say in DILR?
So what I used to do was that I recognized what are my strengths and what are my weaknesses when it comes to DILR. So if you look at the last 4 years, there are certain types of sets that almost always appear. For example, there is one favorite of CAT, that is the 4-set Venn diagram. So in one slot or the other, it's always there. So I focused intensively on that if that set comes in the CAT, I'll attempt that one first, and that actually came up in my slot. So I was fortunate in that sense. Then there is another kind of set, like if you look at games and tournaments, that was another strength of mine that I felt. Then there are sets that I thought that I'm not good at. So for example, sets that are like about scheduling certain deliveries or orders. So I always used to get stuck in them. So I thought that I'll keep those ones for the last. So in the initial phase, when you are gauging your performance, your speed and accuracy, you also need to gauge your strengths and weaknesses, so that in the later phases, you can work on them.
Got it. So for you, it was largely about what you're good at and what you're not good at, what you're comfortable with, what you're not comfortable with. Was it the same for you, Vineeth, or how did you go about selecting?
So the case for me was slightly different. Yes, even I had a comfort area. Like I loved solving Venn diagram questions, and they were generally the easiest. So probably I'll be picking the Venn diagram set. Maybe I'll keep it in the top 2. But the one that I preferred, particularly in the last 4 years, in the papers from the last 4 years, is CAT again started a new pattern, wherein they'll make us play a game or a set that is completely different from the traditional sets that we usually solve. In 2017, there was a chess game. In 2019, there was a raindrop set. So the set, while looking at it, the concept is new. So someone like we might get tensed in that exam scenario. But if we look at the set, it is probably the easiest set in the entire DILR section. So I've seen like in every slot, in every section from the last year. If a new concept is involved, or if a new kind of set is given, the questions are generally easy. And if we can just read the set patiently, if we can understand it patiently, it is quite easy to solve. So that would have been my primary priority every year.
Yeah, so I totally agree with Vineeth on that. The sets which are unconventional in nature are generally easier because they already have an element of newness in them. So that is countered by making them slightly easier, in my opinion. That is something that the exam setters keep in mind. So another type of sets in that same category are something that the coaching centers call as atypical graph sets. So some graph format which is unconventional in nature, not your regular bar graphs or pie charts. These type of sets appear almost every year. For example, scatter plots or something. So I used to always target those in the first reading.
Great. So when you, let's say, took a mock test or even the exam, would you think like, okay, this graph looks very new, let me just see what this question is about, and then you probably read it first and then you'd say, okay, this is solvable, and then so were you actively on the lookout for all these atypical graphs?
Yeah, so as I mentioned, the strengths that I thought that I was good at, I used to look out for those sets. Another thing was I used to look out for was the length of the sets. So for me, it was I'll attempt the shorter sets first and keep the lengthy ones for the end. So those were the two things I focused on.
Got it. And Ashish, what was the case with you as far as DILR set selection is concerned?
So it's almost the same as what Kaustubh and Vineeth said. Like I had a set of questions, a type of sets that I'm most comfortable with, and I used to look out for that. And then another type which I used to look out for, like, are those sets in which if I solve it first, then I'll be able to solve all the 4 questions. I'll be able to answer all the 4 questions at a stretch. Like I don't have to do any incremental calculations. There are many sets in which like new data comes in each question. So I generally tend to avoid that and like do everything in one shot and then get 4 questions done. So yeah, but largely it was which type of set I'm comfortable with, and that you develop after you practice a lot of sets.
All right, got it. And Kaustubh, coming back to the topics for DILR as far as they're concerned, would you say that there are some, so what would you say are some topics that are more important than the others to be done? You mentioned the 4 this thing Venn diagram. You also talked about atypical sets. Apart from that, is there any other topic that you think is a must do if someone wants to score high?
So yeah, so like the sets, these the ones you mentioned, these are a regular feature in CAT. So right from 2017, they are appearing every year. So you can't miss out on practicing those because they are bound to appear in one slot or the other, and they are relatively easier. At least for me and Vineeth, that was the case. And other than that, you can look out for sets that you are comfortable with, and you can practice those more often. So let's say if you're not comfortable with a certain topic in LR, you cannot go about delving deep into it and attempt those only in mocks or sectionals and then analyze them and keep them for the end, because at the end of the day, it's not about attempting all the sets. I mean, there are very few people who attempt all the sets in DILR. So even if you attempt, if let's say there are 6 sets, even if you attempt 4 or 5, then that is a very good number. So yeah.
Got it. Let's quickly take up a couple of questions we've had, and then we'll move on to VRC. Important things, scoring things you can use basically to leverage your preparation and take it forward. Before that, the question we have is from Himanshu. He's asking, for algebra and number system in particular, is there a specific strategy to prepare for them? Is there something that you do differently to make sure that you prepare for algebra and number system well, Vineeth?
In terms of preparation that is required, no, like if we look at, even if I'm taking the example of time provides this booklets, right? QA booklets, in that all the formulas that are required are present. And even if that's not the case, in their website also they have a section where they have all the formulas that are required. Firstly, note them down. And apart from that, any new concept that you have to learn, you'll learn through mocks, as I said. And there was no other strategy that I applied. It was just giving the mocks, and for maths particularly, giving a lot of sectionals helped, because in maths it's a test of speed. And again, after giving the other 2 sections, how how will you able to carry yourself for the next 1 hour, for the next 40 minutes. For algebra, for these sections particularly, there was no separate preparation involved, just a lot of practice, and that practice should be through mock practice.
Okay. All right, then we'll move on to another question that we've had. Just a second. Yeah. So we had Harshad asking, how would you relate AIMCAT percentiles to your this thing on your CAT percentile?
Okay. A general answer will be, but again, this will be the case for maybe 60 to 70% of the population. That is probably if you are scoring above 95 in mock test, that will be good enough for a 99 in the actual CAT.
Okay.
And that is true for all the sections as well. But again, how are you able to compose yourself? Like if particularly anyone who's seen me, like if anyone is on Pagal Guy, I guess many on Pagal Guy do follow me as well. Wherein if you look at my mock scores in QA were never high. My general mock scores for a 300 wala CAT was 13 VRC, 70 to 18 DILR, and 15 QA. This was my general trend for more than 10 to 15 mock tests. But when D-Day came, my lowest score was in DILR, while I performed well in both VRC and QA. So you can never be dependent on a single section. You can never say, this section is where I'll score the highest marks. Just be ready. Just be well prepared in all the 3 sections.
Got it. Then we have Chinmay asking, will give CAT in 2023 and has a BA background. Can I prepare? So he's wondering how he can prepare best starting now. Also, he didn't have a very high profile, 10th, 12th, not very high marks there. So any sort of starting tips for someone who's just starting preparation right now?
I mean, if he's starting prep now for 2023, then instead of focusing on the CAT, you should focus more on your CATs, your UG scores, because already, like you mentioned, the 10th, 12th scores are not that good. So if you manage to do well in your undergrad, that will offset some of those CATs that person has in the past. And for prep, if that person wants to start now, then what they can do is that instead of going into the actual preparation phase of the CAT, they can maybe start reading books, trying to get into the reading zone that is required for CAT, or try doing some mental calculations, mental mathematics, try solving puzzles. So those things are a sort of a primer for your actual CAT preparation, but don't go into the solving or attempting mock phase as of now, is what I would suggest.
Right. Okay, we have again, so speed of questions is greater than the speed at which you answer them. I'll take them up quickly. We have someone asking, is arithmetic and geometry enough to get a 95 percentile?
I mean, we can never say that. What if the questions in both the categories, in both the topics, are probably the most difficult?
Right. Okay, so got it. I'll move on to the next bit, which is Chinmay asking, okay, Chinmay's question is done. Dheeraj is asking, must do sets in day. Dheeraj, we spoke about it. Please go back another 15 minutes and you'll get your answer. Can I take 3 full-length mocks per week along with analysis because I'm preparing full-time and my basics are over? Is the frequency of 3 full-length mocks per week? Is this high, normal, recommended?
I think at this phase, this would be the optimum number of mocks you should take per week.
All right. Okay, awesome. Next is ideal number of, okay, Raj is asking ideal number of mocks that shall be given. We don't know if Raj is preparing full-time or not. So let's say for someone who's not, ideal number of mocks with analysis.
So I was working along with my preparation. So I gave around 30-35 mocks with analysis. Yeah, can take around that.
Okay, what about you, Kaustubh and Vineeth?
So I wasn't working, I was in college, and I attempted approximately 40 mocks, I think, and close to 100 sectional tests.
Okay, I was working. I gave around 50 mocks, 55 mocks, and around 40 sectional tests.
All right. Then we have the next question: how to manage time and increase attempts in quants?
So the strategy that I explained in the beginning of the video, if you follow that strategy for at least 10 to 15 sectionals and all the mock tests, I'm sure your speed will improve. But again, it's about confidence. Now, one mistake that many do while giving any mock test, particularly in QA, is they go linearly. And the second thing, the stress that they had while giving a tough DILR or tough VRC, they carry that on to QA. And when you do that, for the initial questions, you do take a lot of time. So it is important that for the first 20 minutes, you build confidence. And that will come by solving the easy questions, and preferably don't solve any non-MCQ questions within the first 10-15 minutes is what I'll suggest, because you have to have confidence. You have to have, okay, this answer is definitely correct, I'm doing well. And once you gain that, for the next 20-25 minutes, you can go into a boost speed zone.
Okay. One thing which I would like to add is, like, you should know when to leave a set or leave a question. Else you'll be stuck on that, and that'll like have a very detrimental effect on the rest of your session. So don't take any question to your ego, and know when to leave a set or leave a question.
Got it. We'll go to the next one, which is Nilabhra asking, what would be your advice to someone who's scoring 25 to 30 marks in VRC section in their mocks? How do I increase my score, my accuracy or attempts? Ashish, this is probably for you. Ashish, you might want to keep your mic a little far away from your mouth because we hear you a bit too loud.
Is it better now?
Yes.
Okay. So if you're scoring around 25 to 30, then like what you can do is look at if you are attempting a lot of questions. Like if you're trying to attempt all the questions, then probably you can take a couple of mocks and see if you're attempting a little less number of questions, is your accuracy increasing? Are you able to perform better if you're attempting, let's say, 3 RC sets or 4 RC sets out of the 5 that you have? So if that, you need to try these things out. Like there's no standard answer for that. So for some people, the accuracy might not vary if you're like focusing on answering all of them or selected questions. So you need to try these things out. What other strategies you can probably try out is like do a couple of ParaJumbos in between RCs to just break the monotony. So like just to get refresh yourselves a bit by doing ParaJumbos and then come back to RCs. But these are the things that you can try out in mocks and see what works best for you. There's no one size fits all strategy for VRC. So yeah, experiment in mocks and then take a decisive strategy to your CAT day.
All right, got it. Next question we have is, any preference if you guys have in terms of which mock series to take?
So
yeah, carry on.
Yeah, so I'll just mention the mocks that I took. I took IMS and Career Launcher, and there was another series called Test Funda. Okay. So these 3 mocks I took.
Okay. Vineeth, Ashish, you were saying?
Yeah, so I had a 2-pronged approach. I took SimCats, IMS SimCats and times AIMCats. So SimCats are more or less on the level of the CAT, and AIMCats are a bit difficult. So like those used to get balanced out. I knew that I'll score a bit low in AIMCAT and I'll get a dose of like tougher questions. So yeah, that was balanced out with SimCats. So these were the main test series that I took.
Right.
Again, even I'd suggest that AIMCats and SimCats have helped me a lot. Particularly IMS SimCats, they have very good VARC and QA questions, and with the mock practice of them only, I feel I've been able to improve my score in VRC particularly, while time has a great video solutions. Like each video solution of time, they'll teach a new concept, and that is where I was able to gain at least 20% more concepts by the end of my preparation.
Got it. Then we have the next question. We have Tanvi asking, please tell me, how can I learn from mocks, or can I just do arithmetic and algebra? Can I do the rest from mocks itself? And could you also please tell a good teacher for quants who's available online?
I think learning from mocks itself is a very good practice that one can do for at least for DILR and quants. So for DILR, it's all about practice, and doing real-time practice in the form of mocks is the best practice one can do, because you need to give time tests, time sets. You need to attempt those, and you need to see how many sets are you able to attempt in 1 hour. If you are able to attempt one set in every 10 or 12 minutes, then probably you have reached at a good speed. Also in quants, you get exposure to a lot of different kind of questions and concepts. through mocks only. For VRC, I believe that only mocks might not help so much because reading is also a critical part of VRC. You need to read as much from a lot of different sources to get that hang of reading.
Got it. Ashish, we'll just come to the conversation around how I can score highest in VRC, topics, challenges to overcome. Just before that, we have quick questions for all of you. First is, what were your scaled scores in the respective section whose percentile you've mentioned right now? Starting with Vineeth.
I don't exactly remember. Probably around 73.
Okay. Kaustubh?
So in DILR, it was of 72 marks, I believe, and my raw score was 51, which was scaled up to approximately 56.
Got it. Ashish?
I don't remember my scale score. Sorry.
Okay. Anyway.
I just remember my overall score was 157. That's all I remember.
Then next quick question for you all. What was your lowest mock score? Again, it's a percentile. That's the question. Yeah.
So my lowest mock percentile was in a SimCat, and it was around 98.5.
This was the lowest.
Yes.
Please note, everybody. Okay, Ashish.
I had a pretty bad mock once. Like I had a pretty bad day and then I gave a mock. So yeah, I got 88 percentile in an AIM-CAT. So that was the worst I've ever had. I never even had any other percentile less than 97 apart from this one mock. So yeah, that was an off day. But yeah, that's the lowest that I've ever had.
Vineeth, what about you?
In AIM-CATs and SimCATs, my percentiles were decent. In AIM-CATs, my lowest percentile was 95, I think. But there are SAM-CATs of time in which I scored 73 once and 82 once. This was during my first attempt and in the starting stages. So it is fine. If your scores are low for now, you can always improve.
There's one thing, like, don't get demotivated a lot by any low scores that you have. It might just be an off day. Okay, so like, don't fret a lot over any random low score that you get. You'll always come back.
Okay. For us mere mortals who score around the range of, let's say, 70, 80 in their mock test when they're starting out, what are some things you think are important to make sure we cross the 95, 97, whatever the target score is barrier?
What I can say is that in the QA section, the syllabus is pretty much defined. So complete the syllabus and then you know that what type of questions you can expect. Like, it's not the same exactly for DILR and VRC. There's no defined syllabus as such. So if you complete all your concepts and then just go through them at least once and practice a couple of questions from each concept, then you'll score much better in the QA section. So that's one tip which I can give.
Okay, all right, got it. So it's time to move on to the final part of our conversation. We spoke about scoring topics in quants, topics you must not leave. We spoke about the same for DILR. Now we'll get to VRC. Now I understand that VRC is not very, okay, just a second. My younger sister is saying hello to me. Hello. Okay. We know that VRC is not a very topic intensive section. We know that there's going to be RCs, there's going to be ParaJumbos and a few questions around that. Ashish, what is it that you think is most important for someone to focus on when they're preparing for VRC? Must do things.
Obviously, the most important type of questions is RCs because like they cover around 70% of the weightage. But even in RCs, like there are different types of comprehensions, like on different topics. So you might not be comfortable with all the topics that come in CAT. Like for me, I was from an engineering background, so I'm comfortable with reading scientific articles or something related to that, technology or something like that. But I wasn't comfortable with psychology or history or something like that. So what I did was, as I said before, I used to read articles from Aeon, and those sites, they have articles related to psychology, history, and many things like that. So I used to read from there to get myself acquainted to those topics so that like I don't feel like what the heck is going on here. So yeah, that is something which I did to get acquainted to these topics. You must feel comfortable by reading this and then understand what the author is trying to say. What is the underlying interpretation that you have to take out from there? So that is one thing you need to do, like, is be comfortable with the topic. Second thing, you must have a decent reading speed. So yeah, if your reading speed is a bit on the lower side, then you might want to like practice reading a lot, and not just reading with along with understanding, because you have to answer questions after reading. So yeah, and then third thing is trying to practicing those critical reasoning questions, as Vineeth said, from a GMAT resource or any other online resource. You have tons of online resources, so there are no lack of resources. So you can either follow a YouTube channel or some books and practice those critical reasoning questions, because those are generally the questions which many people face difficulties in. So these are the main areas which you should focus on for an RCs. And ParaJumbles, well, I prepared it from box. Like I used to look at the video solutions and get tips from those professors. That's all I did for ParaJumbles. So yeah, focus a lot on RCs because they are the make or break section.
Right. So approaches like you do 1 RC, 2 RC, and you focus on the VA part of it. Not recommended. You'd say that you for September build your skill such that you become good enough at RCs, be able to get a nice chunk of your score from there. And then, so Ashish, we have two kinds of questions for you coming from the audience. First is how much reading did you do? You said you read 1 article a day from Aeon. Was that all in terms of reading that you did?
So that 1 article is like half an hour of reading, or 20-25 minutes. So that is around, I think, 3,500 word article. So it takes some effort to like read that article. So yeah, that was one thing which I did throughout. Apart from that, I used to read the newspapers. Just like I had a habit of reading newspapers. So I didn't count that in CAT prep, just like that. But yeah, that is something which I used to do. And apart from this, I used to solve RCs daily. At least 3 or 4 sets of RCs daily. So that is also a part of your reading and like practice. So these are apart from the sectionals that I used to give in RCs. So I mandatorily used to solve 3 or 4 sets of RCs and 1 Aeon article per day.
And how do you decide, and this question is not just for you, Ashish, for everybody, how do you decide what RC to pick, what RC to leave? What are things you look at? Also, Kaustubh, we didn't talk about it when we were talking about DILR. Whenever you're selecting a set, you said you look at your strengths and weaknesses. But for someone who, let's say, is okay, sorry, this would be for Vineeth, because Kaustubh said strengths and weaknesses. Vineeth, for someone who's looking at a set, they have no idea about that set, and we're talking about DILR right now. What do you say is a recommended way to judge? Is it like you read the questions first to understand what is expected of you, then you also read the set in whatever chronology, and then you make the conclusion that this is what's asked, this is the information that's given, so I'll do it or I'll not do it? Is this a recommended approach, or just skimming through the question for DILR is fine and will do the trick?
So the thing is, for the conventional sets, because you know what the question will be about, even if we skim through it, we'll get an idea of what it's about, and we can judge whether we can do it or not. But for unconventional sets, it is better to go through them instead of skimming them. And once you go through them, it might take a minute or two, but then you'll understand whether it is solvable or not. And that 2 minutes will be worth it if it's an easy one.
Okay, got it. Coming back to you, Ashish. So talking about how do you judge whether an RC is, okay, do you solve all RCs or do you leave them?
I used to solve all. I actually tried prioritizing RCs and to see if my accuracy improved that, but that didn't happen. Okay. So like I used to attempt all and try to maximize my scores. So I never used to leave an RC. But if you want to leave, probably you might go with the familiarity of the topic, because that is actually important. You need to understand the RC to answer the questions. Or you can look at the type of questions, like if a set has only like single choice questions or something like that, like or no twisted questions, like what all are not the correct options, something like that, then you can look into that.
Got it. So Kaustubh and Vineeth, did you do all RCs? Did you leave some?
So my strategy in VRC was the same as Ashish. I used to attempt all the questions. And I also tried minimizing my attempts in order to maximize my accuracy, but that didn't work out. So I used to attempt all the questions, and you need to be, as Ashish mentioned, that you need to be familiar with as many types of sets that are there as possible. And for that, you need to read from as many sources as possible. So what I used to do was that let's say for psychology or philosophy articles, which are a regular feature nowadays in CATs, I used to read from a section of Aeon, which is called Aeon Psych. Then for history geography, there is something called Atlas Obscura, which I used to follow. So for different kind of articles, I had bookmarked different pages on my Facebook feed, and I used to read them for a while every morning. That is something that helped me familiarize with those sets. And yeah, I mean, reading is very important. I mean, it's the single most important skill for CAT, I would say.
Right. And Vineeth, asking you, was there any RC you would skip, or did you also do all of them?
So for me, I'll say, like, I mean, I do agree that reading is probably the most important habit that one has to develop while preparing for CAT. But I did not have that habit. I don't even have that habit now. If a friend of mine suggests a novel to me, I'll be like, I'll wait for a couple of years and some director will make a movie out of it and then I'll watch it. So for me, what I did was, one, do that book, one, learn critical reasoning. And the second thing was, if I'm giving 3 mocks every week, that means 3 into 5, 15 passages. And if I analyze them into 2, 30 passages. And if I'm giving a couple of sectionals, 10 more. 40 passages, nearly 40, I mean, 40 passages divided by 5, nearly 8 hours. That was enough reading practice that I needed for the week. But what I did was, I followed a DILR, an approach similar to DILR for RC sets as well. Wherein if I read an RC for maybe 4 to 5 minutes, and then I went through the questions, there were 5 questions. And for the first question, I could solve it in 2 minutes. For the second question, I used to solve it in 2 minutes. But for the next 3 questions, I'm not going anywhere. Initially, I used to guess, because I've already invested 10 minutes in this set. Then why should I let go of 3 questions? Did I invest 10 to 12 minutes just for attempting 2 questions of the question that used to consistently reverberate in my head? So I used to attempt all of them. But what used to happen was, I used to like attempt 9 questions and 9 correctly, 15 wrong. So overall, my score was just 12, which was extremely disappointing to see in the RC section. So then I tried to understand what my mistakes were. And even if I gave 11 minutes to the set, even if I am able to attempt only 2 questions, even if I am able to attempt only 1 question, I thought that is fine. For me, that 9 questions, that 27 marks is more important than attempting all the questions. And that worked for me. That helped me from pushing my score from 20s to 30s to then 40s to 50s. And after that, it becomes a game of confidence. Once you gain that confidence in the section, you'll be able to increase your score as well.
Quick question for you, Ashish. How much time should I take for each RC if I'm attempting all of them?
I think around 6-7 minutes per RC should be good.
Also, so given that, what was your strategy for VA? Would you do, for VRC, would you do VA towards the end, do RCs first? Would you mix and match? What worked for you?
So I used to do RCs upfront, and then I had a cutoff time after which I would strictly go on to VA and the other sections. So in the last 12 minutes, that in the 40-minute test, last 12 minutes was set apart for the ParaJumbos and the other types of VA questions. Until then, I would like do only RCs and try to maximize my attempts. So if any RCs are still pending, or if any questions are still pending, I used to just skip it and move on to the VA questions, because most of the VA questions don't have a negative marking. So yeah.
Then again, any preference or any recommendation within VA? So ParaSummaries versus ParaJumbos versus odd man out, any preference you had out of these?
So it depends on what you are most comfortable with. Again, like try out in the mocks, you'll get to know that what you are most comfortable with. So like I used to like odd one out. So like that was pretty easy for me. Like I just need, and it had a 20% probability of like getting it correctly. So yeah, I used to always attempt that first, and then I used to attempt the summary ones, and then I used to attempt the ParaJumbos.
Right.
So that was my priority order.
Got it. And when you talk about that cutoff time, so what that basically means is, even if let's say you're on the 4th passage and you're thinking, "Bas, I'll just get it done in the next 5 minutes," that's when you would ask yourself to stop, regardless of whether you're reading the passage or you're on the first question. Doesn't matter basically.
Doesn't matter. If I'm the last question, then probably I'll give another minute, but otherwise no.
Okay, got it. And okay, great. So another question I had for VRC for you was that we have a lot of aspirants who basically want to understand how they can build a comfort level, with reading comprehension, basically reading, answering questions. This is probably new for them, something they're not comfortable with it. So general answer could be just practice more and more until you get comfortable, and you read more and more until you get comfortable reading. Anything apart from that, how do you sort of build the confidence and comfort level that allows you to do 4 RCs in 6 minutes each?
So understanding the topic actually helps. Being comfortable with the topic actually helps you like go through an RC quickly. Like I saw the difference when I started reading more on psychology, history, and all those topics. And then when I came back to again attempt my mocks, so I saw the difference. Like I used to take more time per a psychology RC, suppose, like than I used to give for a tech RC. So understanding the topic actually helps. So for that, again, reading habit and practicing, it comes down to that again. Like there's no other secret sauce to that.
Awesome. So 5 minutes to go, and I'll ask you to wind up your thoughts in these 5 minutes. I'm going to start with you, Vineeth, and I'm going to ask you to wind up your thoughts on what are the most scoring topics for CAT 2021.
For QA, definitely arithmetic and permutations and combinations for me. And for DILR, one unconventional set and one probably the Venn diagram. It is often the most simple one. For VARC, I mean, I had a lot of comfort in solving ParaJumbos because from CAT 2019, I guess, from CAT 2018, where they reduced from 5 to 4, it was easy to guess the order. And science-based RCs, any RC that you're comfortable with.
Awesome. Kaustubh, what about you?
Yeah, so for DILR, I would say, as Vineeth mentioned, unconventional sets, as well as the 4-set Venn diagram. Other than that, I had a personal bias for puzzles and games and tournaments kind of sets. Apart from that, you can also look to sets which have some sort of unconventional, for example, alphanumeric sets or sets that require you to decode certain things. And another thing that I used to follow with DILR was that there are sets when you're required to solve each question individually. So I used to keep that set for the last. So even if there are 2-3 minutes left, then you can attempt at least 1 or 2 questions out of that. So that should be it. Yeah.
Got it. And Ashish, before your closing statement, we have a quick question for you. When there's someone, when they read a passage, they go to the next paragraph, they forget what they read in the first paragraph. Any solution for this?
So yeah, this used to happen to me a lot. So again, like this comes back to my reading exercise which I used to do. So I used to read from Aeon, and those are pretty long articles, and I used to get bored of it when I started reading it. But then I used to make 1-line summaries for each paragraph. So that used to form a chain of thought. Like that I used to understand the flow, what the author is trying to build. So after reading it for like 1 or 2 months, then I didn't need to write it down. So that flow was already there. And yeah, when you carry on this reading habit for 2 months, 3 months, then you'll start to have more concentration, and then you'll also develop that flow of thought which you need. So yeah, this helped me a lot. I had the same problem in CAT 2019. So yeah.
All right, awesome. Thanks, Ashish. Any other thing you want to share? Leave our audience with as far as
another thing that I would add on to that same line of thought that Ashish mentioned was that when it comes to reading, what used to happen with me, that if I used to skip my reading practice for 2-3 days, I used to instantly notice this thing in mocks and sectionals that I'm getting slowed down. I cannot comprehend as fast as I should be. So being regular with your reading is very important, especially 10-15 days before the CAT. Try to get into that groove that you are reading at least 1 to 2 hours every day.
One thing that I want to say is probably enjoy this process. Like if you are not enjoying giving those 3 hours mock tests, if you are not getting that competitive spirit, you'll never be able to give your best. Enjoy whatever you're doing, have a lot of fun, and that is how you'll give your best.
I agree with Vineeth. Like I used to enjoy like DILR and QA a lot. Then I developed my skills to enjoy VRC also towards the end. But yeah, that's what it takes.
I love how Ashish says I developed my skills. Once they
I had 89% in 2019. So
okay. All right, it was lovely speaking with all of you. Thank you so much for making the time and sharing genuine thoughts, experiences. To the audience, if you have unanswered questions, I'll make sure to take them up in the next live conversation we have around CAT Prep. Meanwhile, let me know what you think about today's conversation. I hope this was helpful. And thanks, Kaustubh, Vineeth, Ashish, once again for joining me today.
Sure. Thanks a lot for having us.
Thank you.
Before we say bye-bye, I just quickly want to share with our audience that we created a mini mock series here it's on the InsideIIM.com website. We did it so you could take out some time from your study routines, like a 15-minute, 20-minute, half an hour, basically take up tests and then do analysis, improve upon it. These people, they've taken about more than 40-50 sectional tests. More than that, Kaustubh took 100. So to just help you with your preparation in terms of sectional tests, topic-wise tests, we created the mini mock series. You'll find the link in the description. Please check it out. If you're a serious aspirant, this will help you a lot because this is low time investment, but a lot of outcome practice learnings, all of that. So I hope that helps you. I hope this live helps you. Yes, I hope a lot. I'll see you in the next live. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. Have a good evening.